This new box of tools just showed up from Kreg Tools, so let's open it up and I'll give you my first impressions. Alright, so we have 8 new products in total, and the first one that I'm going to tell you about is this panel carrier. So let's see if I can get this undone. So these are very simple to use, and they make a huge difference in how easy it is to transport sheet goods around the shop or load it into your truck, out of your van, whatever. So basically all you do is you hook this around the top of the panel, and then you pick it up like so, and you walk away. So let's see if I can find a piece of sheet goods. Oh, hey, I'm just carrying stuff around. All right, so as you see, this makes it super easy to carry around sheet goods. All right, so the next item I'm going to tell you about is the multi-purpose project blocks. So if you've seen bench cookies, they've been around for a long time. This is a new twist on that. You have a Grip Max anti-slip surface on both sides, so you can set this on your workbench and it's not going to slide around super easy. But one thing that's neat is that you can twist these and you have a little tip that pops up out of the center, and with that you can turn this into a support for painting a surface. You just pinch this little tab here on the side and then twist, and that point will pop up. So you may be wondering, like, okay, that's all fine and good, this little point pops up, but if you put any weight on it, is it going to collapse? Well, let's find out. So I have just a little piece of MDF. Now let's grab something heavy. So I have 2 boxes of 1,000+ pocket hole screws. It's probably 30-ish, maybe more, 30 pounds. And it doesn't even offer to collapse. So these will hold up to 200 pounds per set of 4 project blocks. So I'm pretty sure these are going to be okay underneath the weight of a tabletop or shelf without having them collapse. So with these project blocks collapse, there are a couple of things that you can use these for. Obviously, you can set your workpiece on top of them and sand. You could do some edge routing. But another thing that's cool is that you have 1.5 inches of clearance. So if you happen to have the 520 pocket hole jig from Kreg, you can set your workpiece on top of these project blocks and get easy access to clamp a board, drill your pocket holes, and keep on working. And that's the multi-purpose project block. The next item is an update to a jig that Kreg has had for a long time. It's the shelf pin jig. So let me show you what's new about this one. So once you open up the packaging, you have the jig itself, which is pretty similar to the previous model, but there are a couple of small differences. You have the fence that you can use on either side of the jig to locate it against the edge of a surface, and it snaps right in place, comes right back out. You still have the storage option here on the back to store your drill bit, your indexing pin, and the Allen wrench that comes with the jig. And the jig also comes with a handful of shelf pins. Now, obviously, you're going to need more shelf pins, most likely than the 4 that come with it, but Kreg has you covered. They also sell shelf pins individually. As far as the drill bit goes, you have a 5mm drill bit that comes standard with the jig, but they still have the option for a 1/4 inch drill bit if you choose to use that size shelf pin instead. Now, regardless, both size drill bits now have a brad point on the end, and that's used to drill a pilot hole for the cabinet door hinges that you may be using in your project. So now I'm going to show you real quick how to use this jig for your projects. So let's pretend that this is a cabinet side and I want to drill some shelf pins in it. The first thing that I'm going to do is obviously grab my jig, and if it makes sense, I'm going to use the fence. Just going to lock that onto the edge of the jig and then slide the jigs firmly up against the edge of my piece. So like that. I have my drill bit in my drill, and I'm just going to drill straight down. Now, I've drilled the first hole. What I want to do, just to make sure that I don't slide around, is I'm going to go ahead and push that indexing pin in place. And now, this jig is going to stay locked in place. I'll go ahead and drill the rest of my holes. Alright, so from here, what I can do is if I need to drill another series of holes, I can use this indexing pin that is already in the jig, and I would locate it in the last hole that I drilled. And then I can continue a series of shelf pin holes as long as I want, and they'll stay equally spaced because this indexing pin locates the jig in one of the previously drilled holes. So with all my holes drilled, obviously I can take my shelf pin and slide it into place, and voila, I have a shelf pin. The other feature that I wanted to show y'all was the ability to line up this jig with some witness marks that you might have on your cabinet size for something like hinges for your doors. So let's show you that real quick. So look, I have a new edge of my cabinet. I'm going to just take my combination square and draw a straight line. So I'm going to pretend that this line is the center line of where I want a hinge. So what's neat is that the spacing on this jig actually is exactly what you need for some Euro style hinges. So I know it's hard to see, but what I'm going to do is I have this line right here, and there are some notches right here and here in the jig. I'm just going to line those up with the reference line that I just drew, and I'm going to then drill a hole here and here, but I'm only going to use the very end of the brad point on this drill bit. So let's do that real quick. All right. And I drilled just a little bit farther than I meant to, but as you can see, I have a pilot hole. That makes it super easy for me to drill for the screws for my hinges and install that hinge accurately. All right, so that's the new and improved shelf pin jig. The next item up is a drilling guide, so let's open it up and take a look. So this is a very cool little accessory that I saw for the first time at Workbench Con. Obviously you could set it down on a bench like that and drill a hole wherever you needed to, but what's neat is that it also has these grooves in the back that will perfectly center a hole on the edge with a piece of 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch material. So let me show you that real quick. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab a 1/4 inch bit and chuck it up into my drill, and I'm going to hold the guide on the edge of this piece of 3/4 inch material. And there you go, got a 1/4 inch hole right there in the edge of that sheet. So now let's try it out on this 1/2 inch MDF. So like I said, it has a groove for both sizes. And I just about guarantee you if I were to do that by hand, I would have blown out the side of this, but straight down through the material, that is pretty neat. So obviously you can set this guide just straight down on your sheet and drill into the flat section of the board, but how do you get that lined up? Kreg has a handful of witness lines that you can use to line up this jig, so that way you're drilling your hole exactly where you want. All right, so let's say that I want to drill a hole right about there. I will just draw some witness lines real quick. And basically all I do is just line up the jig with the witness lines that I have drawn, and looks like I'm on target. So drill the hole, not all the way through into my workbench, and check it out. Pretty cool. So that is the Kreg drill guide. All right, so now we have the Kreg Quick Flip. This is a 2-piece drilling accessory. On one side, it has a countersink bit, and then on the other side, it has a square drive for your pocket hole screws. So let's open it up and check it out. So what we have here is a double-sided accessory. On one side you have the countersink drill bit, and then on the other side you have a square drive for your pocket hole screws. And depending on which side you need, just move this collar forward, remove the bit, slide it back into place, and pull the collar back to lock it in place, so that way you can use the bit. So let's try it out. All right, so as you can see, definitely a scrap 2x4. All right, so what I'm gonna do is first drill a counterbore hole. So I have the counterbore side out. Alrighty, and now I'm just gonna flip this over to the driver's side and drive my screw in. All right, and as you see, the screw is now obviously flush below the surface, so from here you could put a plug in there, or you could just putty over it to fill that hole. All right, so that is the quick flip accessory from Kreg. And this is definitely a handy accessory I'll be keeping in the tool bag. Next, we have another drill accessory that I could have used on my last project. It's a 90-degree pocket hole driver. So let's open it up and check it out. So in the package, you obviously have the driver head itself, and then you also have a relatively short square drive bit. So that's pretty nice. The collar on here simply locks into place. To lock the driver in, you just push it in and it locks into place automatically. To remove the driver, you pull the collar back, driver pulls out. Pretty nice. All right, so let's see how it works. Okay, so we have our same trusty, already used 2x4. I have not used one of these before, but I have wanted one in the shop for a while, so helps if I'm going the right direction. That is awesome. That's really cool. So if you find yourself in a tight spot and you're having trouble getting your pocket hole screws in, go ahead and check out the 90-degree head pocket hole driver. Pretty cool. The next new product that I want to tell you about is the Pocket Hole Jig XL. And they have added a new size to their XL pocket hole screws. They now have a 4-inch variety. Previously they'd only had 2.5, so this 4-inch is definitely going to add some versatility, especially when you're joining 4x4s together. So let me go grab a 4x4, we'll open this up and test it out. Alright, I'm back from the store, so let's open this up and check it out. By the way, any of y'all terrified that I'm going to slice myself with the knife? Okay, so opening up the package, you have the jig itself, obviously. You have a gigantic pocket hole drill. You also have a larger pocket hole driver. So the square drive on this is a little bit larger than the ones for the standard size pocket hole screws. And then obviously the collar and an Allen wrench so that you can set the depth of what you're needing to drill. On this drill bit, you have the same markings that have been standard on the pocket hole drills for a while now. So simply slide the collar to match whatever thickness of material you're drilling into and then lock it down. So since I have some 4x4s here, I'm going to line that hole up over the 3.5-inch marking, and now I'm set to drill some 4x4 material. So this pocket hole jig can be separated from having 2 guides in one unit to just being one standalone guide. And if you don't need the locating feature on the back, say you need to do a repair in the middle of something rather than drilling new holes right here on the end of a board, you can actually separate this section. It just slides right off, and then to put it back in place, you simply line it up, push it down until it clicks, and then you're good to go. So I'm going to drill some holes in this 4x4, and then we're gonna screw them together and check out those awesome 4-inch beefy screws. So I have my jig back together. The jig comes with a clamp pad adapter, and this is super easy to use. You just push these tabs together. You can spread the adapter apart or together, and this clamp is not big enough to clamp onto 4x4 material, but what you do is you simply slide the pad of your clamp into the adapter, close it down, then you have this little rubber foot that locates into the top of the jig. You just press that into place, and then you can clamp to your material. But since I don't have a clamp large enough for 4x4 material, I'm just going to use a Bessie trigger clamp, and we will clamp this thing in place and see what we got. Okay, so I have my drill, I have my safety glasses, which I might have not put on earlier. So I have my gigantic pocket hole bit in place, and let's drill some holes. And now let's trade out for our driver. Slap some of these big 4-inch screws in. Slam a clamp on it, hold it in place. Let's see what we have. Obviously, you could assemble this in a variety of orientations, but the way that I did it, just for testing, but goodness gracious, that is not gonna go anywhere. So, if you have a heavy-duty application, maybe check out the XL pocket hole jig and those 4-inch screws. The last new product for today's video from Kreg is the cabinet door mounting jig, and this is one that I'm really excited about. I think it's going to make my life a lot easier. So let's open it up and take a look. Okay, so once you open up the packaging, obviously you have the main part of the jig, you have a support arm that snaps into place where it's needed, and then you have instructions. So the whole point of this jig is to help you accurately install your cabinetry doors. So on the front of the jig, you have a series of numbers 1 through 9, and then inside the manual is a chart that corresponds to each one of these numbers and what the overlay dimension is. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna say that this is the bottom of your cabinet, and this can be a face frame cabinet or a frameless cabinet, it does not matter. What you're gonna do is set the jig on that bottom surface. You can clamp it in place, and then you're gonna decide which one of the holes you wanna put the support arm into for the overlay you need for your cabinet. And then that just locks into place. And if necessary, you also have these magnetic shims that will drop in to fine tune the height of your door. So from there, what you're gonna do is you will set the door on this surface, and this is just a support, so that way you're not, you know, holding the door with one hand while you're trying to secure the hinges to the side of the cabinet. So you're gonna set the door there, and then you would drill your hinges into the side of the cabinet. So what's nice is that this jig is symmetrical, so you can use it for the left or right hand side of your cabinets. Simply flip it over, you'd put the clamp over here, lock this into place, and then do your door on the other side. So that was the cabinet door mounting jig from Kreg, and as soon as I have another cabinetry project, I'm going to use this and show you exactly how to use it on a build. Right now, all I can do is give you an example with my universal piece of plywood. If you want to see more tool reviews that I've done, you can check out this playlist right here. And if you want to see more of my woodworking projects, check those out. Until next time, thank you so much for watching and have fun making something. All right, so the next product I'm going to tell you about is the